How we doing, everyone? Welcome to Pushing the Pylon, Episode 2. This is your host, Jim Tannhauser, and before we get started with anything else, I just want to thank all of you who tuned in for Episode 1. It was really important to me to finally drop a podcast episode. I've been talking about it for more than a year now, to run a podcast, and dropping the episode like we did yesterday, we're filming this on Monday, Happy Labor Day, was a huge goal that I was able to check off my to-do list, if you will, that I made for myself. Really special seeing some people would be willing to use our podcast for a source of any type of analysis in football. And all I can do, besides thank you, is continue to get better, continue to do my research before starting these episodes to bring you the best quality product I possibly could. But with that, Week 1 of football is finally here, and we're going to talk about it on this episode for sure. Thursday night football, just a few nights away until we finally get our first NFL game of the season. And in my opinion, you couldn't ask for a better one. You have the defending Super Bowl champion, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, taking on the Dallas Cowboys with their returning Dak Prescott under center. We're going to get into that game. We're going to talk about how that game could go a little later on. We're going to talk about the Jaguars, obviously. What kind of podcast would it be without me if we're not talking about the Jaguars? We're going to discuss their upcoming opponent for Week 1, the Houston Texans, which they have a quarterback under center that some of you may not be expecting to be the Week 1 quarterback for the Houston Texans. The Jaguars, just as I was about to start this podcast, made a few acquisitions, one big piece to their backfield. We'll talk about that as well. We're going to get into our next edition of Hit or Stand. Last episode, we talked about the quarterback battles in training camp. This week, we're going to go over the over-under win totals predicted for each NFL team, and I'll let you know what I think about those. Finally, the least liked team in sports is an NFL team? The answer may surprise you which team that is, but we'll figure it out later in the episode. Before any of that, though, just want to talk about making sure to subscribe to this page, like and follow us wherever you see Pushing the Pylon, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. There'll be more in the future, TikTok, hopefully. But keep following, keep liking, keep commenting, and most importantly, keep listening. That's really why we do this, is to get you all to listen. So the more of you that listen, the more of you that offer your input, the better this show will be in the long run. Without further ado, Thursday night football. How could I keep going without talking about it? You may have already noticed I'm wearing a Dallas Cowboy hat. What you may not have noticed is I'm wearing a old school creamsicle. Got a little too excited there. Number 5 Tampa Bay Buccaneers throwback jersey. Now, who is this, you may ask? Why, none other than 17th overall pick, former quarterback of Tampa Bay, as I get that off, Josh Freeman, who went to, oh boy, did I stump myself, I believe Kansas State University. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But had to rock both. Didn't want to be biased when I talk about this game on Thursday night. So I'm coming correct with both team colors. Dallas Cowboys, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's going to be a fun one, whether it's defensively with Tampa Bay, offensively with the Dallas Cowboys, or Tampa Bay for that matter. I think we're going to be thoroughly entertained for our first NFL game of the season. Just looking at the updated line here, Tampa Bay is favored by 8, which did go up from 7, as I saw it was earlier in the week, or earlier last week, I should say. And I think the reason for that is the news that we got that right guard Zach Martin will not be playing for the Cowboys on Thursday. A huge blow to that offensive line. All that team has been begging for is to have a healthy offensive line all at once. And it just never seems like they can do that. If they get 4 healthy guys, one of them's injured. The other year, they were banged up, and then Travis Frederick has his health issues, unfortunately, and leads to an early retirement. Who could have predicted? But in this case, Zach Martin, 4-time All-Pro, multiple-time Pro Bowler, and went to, some of you may have known it because they lost yesterday. I'm sorry, they won yesterday. Notre Dame football. But that's a huge blow for them. And speaking of, to compound that issue that the Cowboys have already, Tampa Bay's bringing back Ndamukong Suh for the pass rush. He's off the COVID list. Tampa Bay is officially COVID-free from what they know of. There's no one on the reserve COVID list. Bringing Suh back, they already have the elite defensive players that you see on that side of the ball, the Devin Whites of the world. Hell, you have Antoine Winfield as a safety out there who can any play press forward and pressure the run game. So to add Suh, to lose Zach Martin for the Cowboys is going to be a big problem when they already have to have an extra focus on protecting Dak Prescott coming off his horrific leg injury. The last thing you want to do is make this man under center scramble for his life week 1 or take a lot of hits under pressure. So they have to do everything they can to protect Dak. If that means, not being able to establish the run, that's going to be tough for them. If you watch last episode, I did express how I feel that Ezekiel Elliott is essential to the Cowboys' success this season and to Dak Prescott's rehab. I do think they'll be able to run the ball still, even without Zach Martin. It won't be easy. It'll definitely be much more difficult than it was when we were talking about it a week ago. But I think they have it in them. They're going against the odds, obviously, going to enemy territory down in Tampa Bay. Defending Super Bowl champions, first game since the Super Bowl. You have Tom Brady, who has only done this, 7 times now, win a Super Bowl and bring his team back the next season and motivate them. No worry about any type of Super Bowl hangover for the Bucs. Expect them to come ready to play, perhaps hungrier than last year just to prove it wasn't a fluke. In the COVID season, a lot of people were talking about, asterisking whoever wins the championship. Tampa Bay's out to prove that no matter what year it is, no matter what pandemic or not is out there, they can win games and that they are a contender in the NFC. The Dallas Cowboys, on the other hand, have everyone in their ear talking about how they are the notorious franchise for choking, that they will never make it to the big game again, and that they ultimately, as good as their roster always is, they crumble apart, whether it be to the division rival Giants or Eagles or in this Washington football team last year in this case. They always have that monkey on their back that they need to get off, and that's not to go win a Super Bowl, which that would be helpful. Is to just succeed in the regular season and parlay that into a deep playoff run. That's all that Cowboys critics want to really see from them on a consistent basis, because they have the roster to do it every single year. We're going to see that going against arguably top 3 team in the NFL, most would say, the Tampa Bay Bucks. And with Vegas having it as an 8-point spread, that tells me they think the Bucs are going to handle them pretty well. Most likely by double digits, they'd imagine. I'm not too sure of that one, on the other hand. I do think the Cowboys keep it close. I don't know if they go and win that game. Tampa can very easily win week 1. But 8 points, we'll get into it with picks later this week. I'm going to release something outside of the podcast to give my picks. Spoiler alert, if you listen to the podcast, I'll give you a little insider tip here. I'm going to pick the Cowboys plus 8, no doubt. But regardless of that, should be a fun Thursday night game. I have to wait till Sunday to watch the Jaguars, which we'll get into now. They'll be playing the Houston Texans at 1 o'clock on Sunday. Deshaun Watson, normally the guy under center for the Houston Texans, will not be this week or for the foreseeable future. Last time I checked, he was 4th on the depth chart behind names like Davis Webb and the now starter for the Houston Texans, Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor has played a few games against the Jaguars. I believe he's 1-1, unless I'm missing a few games from his past. He did lose in the playoffs when he was a Buffalo Bill to the Jaguars. I have to bring that up. One of my favorite games to watch as a fan. But I digress. We're in different times now. The Jaguars are facing low expectations, I'd say, from most of the league. They do have Urban Meyer, new coach. They do have the phenom franchise guy, Trevor Lawrence, now as quarterback. But I don't think many people expect them to win football games. They see the Tennessee Titans in that division. They think that's a free ride division championship again. They see the Colts, who may have their flaws, but most people think they should handle the Jaguars because anything that the Jaguars can do, the Colts roster looks slightly better at it, with the exception of quarterback, which is a toss-up at this point. The Colts seem to just edge out the Jaguars in every spot the Jaguars have a strong spot. We'll get into that when they play the Colts, but for this week, we'll focus on the Texans. I read somewhere online, someone said that the pressure's on Trevor Lawrence because this is the closest to a college team that he'll ever play again. Now, that's not the worst take I ever heard. Obviously, we'll put aside the fact that professional sports are miles ahead of college competition. But there is some truth to that, where Trevor Lawrence, if he comes out of week one with a bad game, yeah, you're going to have the excuse of it's his first week, he's a rookie, he's learning. But you're going to have the other people saying, well, it's not getting any easier. He's going to have to play the Cardinals this year, just like the Titans have to week one, which is one of my favorite games to watch. We'll talk about that, like I said, at another time. The Travis Etienne injury for the Jaguars was something a lot of people talked about. They tended to kind of stray away from that and stick with James Robinson and Carlos Hyde as two guys they're fine with having back there. They signed Duke Johnson today, former Houston Texans running back from the U. So it shows they wanted to put a little more oomph in their backfield. I think they got it with Duke Johnson. I'm not the biggest fan of his run game, but compared to what the Jags had, he's definitely a welcome sight. He can definitely surpass Carlos Hyde as the second running back on the depth chart, I believe. I hope he does. I do have high expectations for Duke Johnson to come on this team and make an impact, especially with a rookie quarterback. He's going to have to get a lot of carries in situations where back when he had Deshaun Watson, he probably didn't have to worry about it, even though he was there with a younger Deshaun Watson as well. The tight end issue for the Jaguars was also addressed this week. They signed Jacob Hollister. He's no Travis Kelce. He's no George Kittle, but I'll tell you what, the Jags tight end position has been very fluky this offseason. It's never really been strong, even last season. But they brought in Tim Tebow to work out at tight end. It's just little things like that show you that spot was never solidified at all. James O'Shaughnessy was the main guy in that tight end room until they brought in Chris Manhertz this year, former Jet. He'll be the starter, even with Hollister and O'Shaughnessy there. I don't love it, but I do like what I've been seeing out of Manhertz this preseason. I think he's done pretty well. I think he can be viable in an offense that should be relying on multiple other targets before him. The DJ Charks, the Vishka Chenaults, Marvin Jones, James Robinson. Those guys should be getting the majority of the balls in the passes. So Manhertz should only be there in certain situations. Hopefully against the Texans, you don't need it. Hopefully Trevor Lawrence can put on a clinic, throwing the ball up to DJ Chark and throwing it under to Chenault to score. I like their chances, obviously. I don't know. I've tried to not be biased with the Jaguars in this case, but they're playing the Houston Texans. I mean, it's week one. My optimism's at an all-time high that it could be this season. Playing the Texans only makes that optimism grow. So we're really going to see if Trevor Lawrence comes out and torches the Texans, then we can talk about the hype again. But worrying about week one for him, he has little injuries here and there around him, like the ETNs of the world. What he doesn't have, though, is a hurt offensive line. Urban Meyer did say today that all 5 offensive linemen are expected to start. Again, this is Monday today. It's still a whole week before Sunday, so hopefully that doesn't change. But make sure to follow along on social media, and we'll keep you posted on that. All right, time for one of my favorite games of the podcast, even though it might be the only game we have so far. Hit or stand. Hit or stand. If you're familiar with blackjack, you don't need to listen anymore. If you're not, hit or stand, basically what it does, we're going to bring up a this or that situation. Last week it was 2 quarterbacks that were battling for the starting position. This week, we're going to do over-unders for wins totals, over-under. So if I hit, I need more of it. I need a higher win total because I think they'll surpass that. If I stay, I think that win total's just good where it is because they won't even reach that anyway, or we'll just meet that. So I will pull up the win totals we have here. This is according to Las Vegas. This is according to, get it right here, Caesar Sportsbook and BetMGM as well. They have both here. Half game, give or take, with each one. But they're pretty consistent for the most part. Starting with the first one, and you may already know where I'm going with this if you watched episode 1, the Arizona Cardinals, their over-under win total is 8. So do you think the Cardinals will go over or under 500 this year? I think they'll go over 500. I'm going to hit right there because I think they have an outside shot to win their division. And you don't do that in that stacked division with only 8 wins. I do think they'll hit double-digit wins this season. It's not going to be easy. They're not going to be the best team in the NFL record-wise or anything like that, but 8 games I think is a little low for them. I think it's quite generous. You can see it with the juice on it being minus 140. You know, higher the number that is away from 100, the more favorable it is. So 140 tells me that they think that 8's a little low. Maybe 8.5 would be better, maybe even 9. Next, we have the Atlanta Falcons. This one's a really tough one for me. Over under 7.5 wins. They have the good offense. They have the cool players here and there. You know, the Matt Ryans. They have the Calvin Ridleys. They don't have the Julio anymore, but then they go and add a generational tight end with Kyle Pitts out of Florida University. 7.5 wins. It's going to be extremely close. I do think the Falcons right around 500 somewhere. I don't think they'll be a 4-win team or anything like that. For the sake of this, however, I'm going to stand. I'm going to say we're 7.5's right about where I think they'll win, 7 or 8. They just don't have everything it takes to go and stand up against the Tampa Bay twice a year in that division. New Orleans lost Drew Brees, but I still think the Saints go and beat the Falcons this year when they play. And that's not to say the Carolina Panthers can't sneak one out against them as well. So the 500 projection, I think, is good for them. 10.5 over-under in wins for the Baltimore Ravens. I think they could go over that. We just talked about their schedule last week. Only 4 games in there I could see them realistically losing. They could lose others, but I think that would involve them severely being outplayed by their expectations. They'd have to have a really bad game to lose to some of those teams on that schedule, I think. But 10.5 wins, again, very close to where I think they'll be, the 11 mark, maybe 12 wins. But I'm going to go over with the Falcons, or with the Ravens, excuse me. We're going to say hit, because I do think they'll go over 10.5. I think they'll hit the 11 mark, and I think they win that NFC North. Speaking of AFC division champions of the future, the Buffalo Bills, over under 11 wins. Now, 11 seems like a lot, but when you take into account they play the Jets twice a year, the Patriots twice a year, who they should beat, regardless how much better the Patriots are from last year, the Bills should beat them. But 11 wins. I'm going to stay. I'm going to stand. I think 11's a good number. I do think maybe they hit 10. Seeing it 12 or even 13, you're not going to see me projecting that for the Bills necessarily. But they can certainly hit, 10, 11 wins, no doubt. Carolina Panthers, with Sam Darnold there now. Who knows, right? Christian McCaffrey, that offense clearly is going to rely on him as long as he's healthy. It's pretty even. We're at plus 100 for the juice here, so it could go either way. But we have over or under 7.5 wins for the Panthers. I'm going to stand. I'm going to go under here just because I don't think their division allows them to win that many games. I don't think the Saints lose to them once or twice. I don't think Tampa Bay loses to them. I think they might split with the Falcons. I don't see them sweeping the Falcons. It's going to be tough. The Panthers are better than last year. I do think so. But to say they're going to be over 500 in an already tough conference, tricky division, I don't see it. I'm going to stand with the Panthers under 7.5. Chicago Bears also at 7.5. That one's very concerning to me, seeing as Andy Dalton's the starting quarterback week 1. It's not even Justin Fields. I'm going to stand on that one. We're going to say the Bears go under 500. They get 7 or less wins. If they get 8 and go right over, I won't be shocked. But we're going to go under for the Bears because I don't see a reality which they go over 500 this year. Cincinnati Bengals, over under 6.5 wins. Now, on the other hand, while I think the Bengals are also in a tough division where they won't win that many games, can they win 7? It's really tough there. It really hinges on Joe Burrow's ability to cut right back into the professional game, coming off the terrible knee injury last year. Is he ready this year? I think he is. I think he has the weapons around him to win some football games. Bengals 6.5, however, again, I'm going to stand just because I think they're going to be right around that 6 to 7 mark. Don't see them hitting 500, but also don't see them being the worst team in the NFL. Last place in the division, maybe. Probably, actually. But worst team in the league, I think we see some worse ones out there. The Cleveland Browns. Now, this one's a really interesting one because a lot of you out there love the Browns this year. A lot of you saw last year how they came in. They surprised most, if not the entire National Football League, and won a playoff game for the first time in, at least 20 years, over 20 years, I'm sure. Their over-under win total, 10.5 wins. They have everyone back they had last year. They really didn't lose that many vital pieces, if any. I'm going to say under. I'm going to stand at 10.5. I think they win 10 or 9 games. I don't, even double digits though. I think 10's a stretch in my opinion for the Browns. But we're going to say under. If it's 10, whatever. But I'm going to say 9-7 for the Browns, and that's without looking at their schedule. I said 9-7, but you know what I mean. With a 17-game season, 9 wins. I'm going to stay right around there, 8 or 9 wins. Dallas Cowboys. Just talked about them at the top of the show. Over under 9 wins. Now, if you buy into the Cowboys, if you think that they have the offensive weapons, that they improve the defense, that Micah Parsons can make a difference for them on that side of the ball, 9 games shouldn't seem like that much to you. And that's exactly why you're going to see me, dealer, hit me. 9 wins. Cowboys are going to win double digits this year. They're going to win that division, I believe. Dak Prescott is, barring another injury to him, knock on wood, he's going to bring them right back. The Washington football team will not win that division again if Dak Prescott plays every game this season. It just will not happen. And if it does, clip this and send it to me in December and say, Jim, what were you talking about? And I'll say, psych, I won't say anything because it's not going to happen. The Cowboys will win over 10 games this year. Book it. Denver Broncos, over under 8.5 wins. They added to the defense this offseason, makes them really scary, but I think they took away from their offense. They took the car keys out of Drew Lock's hands, gave it to Teddy Bridgewater, stunted Drew Lock's development tremendously, I believe. 8.5 wins. I'm going to stand. I'm going to say under. I'm going to say 8 or 7 wins for them. Tough division. Probably won't beat the Chiefs. May not beat the Chargers. Yeah, I just, if they go back to Drew Lock and he shows significant development, maybe. And I don't even, I'm not a Teddy Bridgewater hater or anything like that, but winning over 8.5 games for him, I just don't see that happening in an already cloudy AFC playoff picture. Now we're getting back to our low win totals. We have the Detroit Lions in a complete rebuild, new head coach. New quarterback. I like Jared Goff, but a new quarterback at that. Their number 1 receiver right now is a rookie. They lost Marvin Jones. They lost any resemblance of a receiver core. Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to have to be relied on heavily. TJ Hawkinson, obviously, relied on heavily. DeAndre Swift, a little banged up coming into the season. We'll see how that gets influenced by their offensive play call. Jamal Williams is there. Good pickup, not anything to rely on. 4.5 wins, though. They really put the bar real low for them. And you know what? I'll be a little optimistic here. Give me the over. I think the Lions win 5 or 6 games somehow. I don't know how, but I think Jared Goff can win them a few games. They're going to stink this year, though. I mean, if they do win 5 games, the 10 or 11 they lose are going to be horrendous, I'm sure. But I don't think they're going to have another 0 season. I don't think that's going to happen with any team this season, personally. And the only team I think it could happen to is one we're getting to a little later. But before that, the Green Bay Packers. This win total was drastically changed in the past month or two with Aaron Rodgers coming back to the team after almost retiring. It was at 8.5, I'm told. It is now currently at 10.5 wins for the Packers. I'm going to say hit. That's a lot. 10.5 is a tall order. I'm going to say hit, however. I think they win that division. I think they win the NFC North. I think they make a good playoff run with Aaron Rodgers motivated. Devontae Adams probably going to have another ridiculous year. Look at their division, though. We just talked about the Lions, who are going through a rebuild. Packers beat them twice. Would you be shocked? No. The Vikings, who are probably the best competition they have in that division, but I'm not a big Kirk Cousins believer. Packers could beat them twice, probably once at least. And then the Bears, who Packers definitely should beat them twice. I don't see why the Packers don't have 4 free wins this season from the Lions and Bears. I'll go over there. We'll say, I want to say 12 wins for the Packers, but we'll just stick it over 10.5. We'll play it safe there. Now, the team that I think is in the running for worst record in the league, the Houston Texans, over under a measly 3.5 wins. Now, if I was a betting man, which bet responsibly if you're legally of age and in a state that's allowed to legally gamble, need to throw that disclaimer in there. 3.5 wins doesn't seem that hard. It seems like something where, you know what, they could accidentally go and win 4 games this year. I wouldn't be so sure, though. It's Tyrod Taylor's there. All due respect to him, he's not a slouch, but he's definitely not Deshaun Watson. They have no offensive weapons for him. They cut Kiki Kuti, who I thought was actually one of their good receivers. They lose Will Fuller, who they probably didn't even have anyway because he was going to be suspended. And when he was with the Texans, he was getting in trouble left and right. You have Duke Johnson now gone. You're relying on David Johnson and Phillip Lindsay back there. 3.5. Do I have a coin? I want to flip a coin. We have a coin right here. Real time. Flip in the air. We're going to say, I didn't look at it yet, but we're going to say heads is over 3 wins. Tails is under 3 wins. 3.5, excuse me. And it is heads. Hard to see, but we'll go over 3.5 wins. We'll say the Texans somehow eke out 4 wins. I don't know where they'll get them. Hopefully not week 1 against the Jaguars, but we'll say over. The Indianapolis Colts being at 8.5 wins seems low. I'm sure a lot of people will go over on that one. I'm going to say over. I will say over just because I think 8.5 is quite low. Not that I don't think they're going to get anything like 12 or 13 wins, but 8.5 is low. If it was 9.5, we'd talk, but they could get 10 wins this season. We'll pick the over. I'm rooting against them to lose every game, obviously, but we'll see. And now we're on to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Their over-under is an even number, which we don't see a lot on this list. 6 wins. No half here. We're strictly at 6. Can the Jacksonville Jaguars win 6 games with a new quarterback, a new head coach, and a lot of defensive pickups in free agency. I'm going to go over. You all knew I was going to pick over anyway. I don't think it was that much of a mystery. But in all seriousness, 6 wins this season. They play the Texans twice. That can be 2 right there. And I do think there's other games in the season where even if they're halfway decent, they should be able to eke them out. Pulling up their schedule right now. Week 2, the Denver Broncos. They can beat the Broncos. Cardinals week 3 is tough, but then they go play the Cincinnati Bengals. They play the Colts twice, which I feel like the Jaguars, no matter how good or bad they are, give the Colts a run for their money and usually split the series. They have the 49ers, who I'm not that bullish on, not to spoil what I'm going to say later. I don't know their over-under win total yet. The Atlanta Falcons, that's a game they can win. The Jets at the end of the year, that's a game they can win. And guess what? The New England Patriots, even though it's in Gillette Stadium, they can go and win in Gillette, I believe, especially if they're proving that they can string together wins prior to January 2nd. But we'll say hit over 6 wins for the Jaguars. Next, we're going to the defending Asc Champions back-to-back years, Kansas City Chiefs. Their win total's right about what you'd expect, right through the roof. 12.5 wins. Now, that's a high number. The Chiefs can have a really good year, win 12 games, and you wouldn't win if you picked over here. But we're picking over. The Chiefs will dominate. The Chiefs will win their division. The Chiefs may have the best record in the NFL at the end of the regular season. I think they can also go and win the Super Bowl, obviously. That's not really any hot take, I know. But I'll say over 12.5 wins. They added more to their offensive line. They got Joe Thuney in there. He's not Quentin Nelson, but he's better than what we saw in the Super Bowl. Just a banged up, injured, putrid line that Mahomes couldn't do anything with. We'll say over 12.5 wins. Not by much. I don't think they'll go undefeated this season, but we'll say hit. Las Vegas Raiders, over under 7 wins. I'm going to go under here. We're going to stand. Again, same thing with the Broncos. Just a tough division. I don't see them winning that many games in the division unless it's against the Denver Broncos when those two teams go head-to-head twice. They have the flash. They're out in Vegas. They have the beautiful state-of-the-art infrastructure, but I'm not that big of a Derek Carr believer. I don't think he can lead them to an over 500 season in a year like this where it's just going to be so hard in the AFC, and I truly believe that we're going to see one of the more competitive years out of the AFC or NFC for that matter. The playoff, it's going to definitely go down to the last week of the season. We're not going to know the playoff picture in its entirety weeks before the season ends. We just won't. Los Angeles Chargers, 9 wins, over under. To me, this is a travesty. I'm hitting, double downing. The Chargers will win over 9 games. I know it kind of goes against what I literally just said with the Raiders being in a tough division, but I think the Chargers are a team that makes that division hard. They're not in a tough division as much as they are making that division tough, just like the Chiefs. Justin Herbert, I mean, what's there to say about him besides that he can ball? They didn't win many games last year with him. The team wasn't all that great and healthy around them, but they should be good this year. They got more offensive line help. Keenan Allen, he has to be hungry to just go off. I mean, the talent that Keenan Allen is, and the fact that he's been injured or banged up and whatnot throughout seasons the past year or two has really let him fall off the radar for a lot of fantasy football owners, but football fans in general. I think that changes. I think the Chargers go over here. They're not going to win their division, but they can definitely win 10 games, I believe, and get in the wild card, maybe with 11. We have the LA Rams, over under 9.5 wins here. Matt Stafford comes to the team. Some people think that's a breath of fresh air compared to the Jared Goff struggles that they've dealt with. I'd like to remind them that Jared Goff got to a Super Bowl, however, and you can say up, down, left, and right that was because of the defense, but the fact remains he went there. Over under 9.5 wins. A lot of people are going to say over here. I'm going to say under. We're going to stand at 9.5. And that's just because I think they'll get to 9 wins. I don't think they'll get double-digit wins. we're going to say under 9. All due respect to their team, Jalen Ramsey, one of my favorite players in the league. But we're going to go under. The Miami Dolphins, over under 8.5 wins. I like it. In a division where they only have to worry about the Buffalo Bills, or should only have to worry about the Buffalo Bills, they can go over 500. I'm going to say over 8.5 wins for the Miami Dolphins, especially with that defense, who I am head over heels a fan of. The Minnesota Vikings, over under 9 wins. I'm going to say under here. Yes, I know they have the Dalvin Cooks, the Justin Jeffersons of the world. Elite players like that, Adam Thielen. Hope he doesn't get lost in the mix, but I'm going to say under 9 wins. We're going to say they stay right around 500, maybe a hint below 500, but then again, someone has to be second place in the NFC North. So probably 9 wins is a perfect, one of the better projections I've seen on this list so far. That could be an easy push. They could get 9 wins very easily, but we'll say stand just to cover our base to equal or go under that projection. The New England Patriots, rookie quarterback Mac Jones. What do we think he can win? Well, according to Vegas, over under 9.5 wins. I think that's a lot for the Patriots to say they'll win 10 games with a rookie quarterback. I'm going to say stand just because I think the 9 wins is more realistic. If we saw 8.5 here, probably go over. 9.5, we're going to say under here. Pats fans, they can go win 9 games. They'll be disappointed still. But nonetheless, we'll say stand. The New Orleans Saints. Now, here's one where we'll finally, I think, break the trend of how many. We had a couple unders in a row there. Saints, 8.5 wins. I'm going over. I think they're a dark horse to win the NFC South still, even without Drew Brees, even without Michael Thomas for the first 6 weeks. I think they can eke out some wins. I think Jameis Winston surprises people, including me, because I'm not the biggest Jameis Winston fan in the world. But 8.5 games, we'll say over on that one. Moving on here, we have the New York Giants, over under 7 wins. Added Kenny Golladay. Saquon Barkley should be back, barring another injury. 7 wins, however, for the Giants. Now, again, if you haven't noticed, I'm thinking of this in real time. I didn't prepare my over-under picks. I didn't even look at these over-unders before I started the episode, as a matter of fact. But 7 wins, that they might be right around 7 wins. For the simple fact that I think 7 wins is a good projection, we're going to say stand on the Giants. It's just going to be tough for them. And we'll see later with the Eagles. Their win total is different, and that's going to affect my hit or stand, and you'll see why. But before that, we have the New York Jets. 5.5 wins. Doesn't seem like a lot. I think it's a lot for the Jets. I'm going to go stand. I think they go under 5.5 wins. That team's looking rough. Them paired with the Houston Texans may round out the bottom of the AFC. And I don't think there's much competition down there. I'm not going to say the Jaguars. Some of you might say the Jaguars. I'll let you be the judge of that. I just think the Jets and Texans are 2 teams that we see dwelling in the basement by week 17 or the playoffs. We have the other NFC East team that I was referring to, the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, unlike the Giants at 7, the Eagles' win total is 6.5. I'm going to go hit on that one. I'll say they win over 6.5 games. I think they finish second place in the NFC East. Jalen Hurts, not completely sold on him being this elite superstar quarterback, but I think he's good. I think he's viable. I think he does enough. He can get the ball to a rookie Devonta Smith. He can get the ball to Miles Sanders in the backfield. In that division, which I don't think Washington's going to go and repeat as division champions, there's going to be a lot of room for growth in that division. And I think the Eagles take a step in the right direction this season. And eke out the playoffs? I don't think so. But will they be in the hunt at the end of the year? I do think so. Pittsburgh Steelers, over under 8.5 wins. I'm going to say stand under 8.5 wins for the Steelers. I don't think they have an awful year, even though Steelers fans would probably say 8 wins is a bad year for them. I don't think they can beat the Ravens. I truly don't. They have the good talent around them. They lost James Conner, sure. I don't think that's that big of a loss at all, especially when you add on Najee freaking Harris. Definitely an upgrade there, but Big Ben, could this be his last season? Probably his last season, unless he goes and looks like Tom Brady and somehow Benjamin Buttons himself out of his current career trajectory. But we'll say under 8.5 wins. San Francisco 49ers. Now, this is one of my favorite ones here. Over under 10.5 wins. Now, 10.5 wins, to me, seems like you're implying you think that the 49ers can win that division because they're higher than the Seahawks win total. Spoiler alert, we'll get to that next. They're higher than the Rams 9.5. And then they are higher than, who am I missing here? Rams, Seahawks, 49ers, Cardinals. I think the Cardinals at 8 is extremely low, like we said before, but 49ers at 10.5, I don't think they win the NFC West. Even if the Cardinals don't win it, I think the Rams are better than the 49ers. I think the Seahawks are better than the 49ers. 49ers under 10.5 wins might be the most secure under, I feel like, on this list, in my opinion. We're standing. We're no problem. We're telling the dealer to stand before our player on the left or right even tell the dealer what they want to do. We are pre-standing. We're comfortable with it. We're walking away from the table and hope we come back with more chips at the end. Seattle Seahawks, like I just said, they're at 10 wins over under. I'm going to say over 10 wins. It's kind of high. They could easily just win 10. I think they could win 11, and the only reason I'm picking over for them because it hedges my Cardinals prediction to win the division. I think a bird team wins that division. One of them, Cardinals or Seahawks. And right here, did you know that as a starter, Russell Wilson has won fewer than 10 games just once in his career, and he won 9 that year. So over under 10, I think, is very accurate when you think of that stat. Russell Wilson is the definition of a winner, of a baller. That man just knows how to win football games, and we're going to say he goes over 10 this season. Tampa Bay Buccaneers with the highest over-under win total on this list. Besides the Chiefs, I believe we had the Chiefs at, what was it, 9.5, I believe? Or 12.5, I mean, yeah. So we have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers over under 12 wins. I'm going to say under 12 wins. We're going to stand. I think the Buccaneers win more like 10 games, maybe 11. 12 games seems like a lot, especially if you're asking me to go over or under 12 wins. I'm not going to say over 12 wins. There's no way, in my opinion, that they go and win 13 games, 14 games this season. No. The Tennessee Titans, over under 9.5 wins. I mean, what is there to say about the Titans? They're a very scary team. I don't want to give them a ton of credit as a division rival, but when I take off my figurative Jaguars bias cap, the Titans are good. I mean, I'm no secret there. Derrick Henry, one of the best running backs in the league, maybe the most powerful running back we've ever seen in our lifetimes. Julio Jones added there with AJ Brown, is going to be huge for Ryan Tannehill. He should be able to just close his eyes and throw a ball up and get it caught 70% of the time. Over under 9 wins, I'll say over. Respect to the Titans. They can win 10 games this season. If the Jaguars are really just rebuilding with a rookie quarterback, the Titans could go 6-0 in their division this year, maybe 5-1. So 10 wins doesn't seem that out of reach for the Titans. I hope I'm wrong, but we'll say hit. We'll say over. And finally, the team with no name, the Washington football team. Ryan Fitzpatrick being there. I mean, they won the division last year. Now they get Ryan Fitzpatrick, and your win total's at 8.5 wins. I'm going to say under 8.5 wins. I think they finished 4th place in the NFC East. Sorry, Washington fans. Last year's going to have some nostalgia with it because this year might look a lot worse. I don't think the Cowboys give away as many games as they did. I think the Giants and Eagles handle Washington for the most part. Maybe one of them loses once. But we're going to say stand and under 8.5 wins for the Washington football team. Now that was hit or stand. I thought that was a pretty quality one. A little lengthy there, but you have to cover every team in the league. Now my final topic I wanted to touch base on before we talk about closing remarks of week 1 this season is the Action Network, which is a site that kind of talks about sports lines and over-unders like I just read to you. They had a list of the least liked teams in sports, all sports, hockey, basketball, football, baseball. They based this based on negative sentiment on the internet and social media. Now, when I first saw the headline, before I saw the list, I probably thought like a lot of you did, New England Patriots, Dallas Cowboys have to be up there for sure. Maybe even Chiefs now that they're good. But number 1, according to this list, the Las Vegas Raiders. Very surprising to me. And also the fact that there's only one more NFL team in the top 5 is surprising to me. I thought that there'd be more NFL teams there compared to any hockey teams or any baseball teams. But Raiders number 1, I had to sit there and think about it. Why would the hatred for the Raiders be so right now? It said internet, so it's in the social media age. Can't go back to how the Raiders were hated 40 years ago. And I just have to think about maybe it's the money and the long contract they threw at John Gruden. They were in the news for that, I know. That was a big deal. The Khalil Mack stuff, which, I mean, was tough for them, but I don't know why that warrants them to be the most hated team in the league, or most hated team in sports, apparently, according to the internet. And speaking of Khalil Mack, number 5 was the Chicago Bears, which, I mean, is this list based on... Now, it says negative sentiment, and the only thing I can think there is, do they take into account memes and the trash talking that come through memes? Because Mitch Trubisky was the Bears quarterback for a while, and the internet loved roasting Mitch Trubisky, memeing him to death. Does that play a part in this negative sentiment on social media? Whereas opposed to a team like the Jaguars have Gardner Minshew with the memes, so that makes it more positive? Or, I mean, even the Cowboys last year with little Ben DiNucci, he had a lot of hype on the internet. Big TikTok star, for that matter. So do those things take away from the negative ratio that they're trying to assess here? I don't know. I do want to research this more. If you come across this site on your own, let me know what you think of it. If you're seeing some information I missed, I'm going to post a link to this in the bottom of the YouTube episode that you're watching right down there. Check out under the social media handles I put there and the links. I'll put a link to this article to be sure. But yeah, this had me thinking of who would be my top 5 most hated teams in sports. Number 1 for me, if we're keeping it just football talk anyway, we'll do top 5 most hated football teams of mine. Number 1's the Colts. Obviously, that's because I'm a Jaguars fan. Peyton Manning's my mortal enemy. You can put devil horns and a pitchfork on him, and I think it would match him perfectly. That is the closest thing to human embodiment of Satan that I know. That man broke my heart so many times by being good, by leading the Colts to victory over the Jaguars. And yes, I know you all think the Jaguars are bad all the time. Despite that, you should know that the Jaguars were in playoff contention multiple years in the 2000s. But Peyton Manning came and just beat them up when they played these last week or 2 of the season. Then the Jaguars just fell apart, and they'd end up 6-10 or 7-9 or 5-11. Colts number 1 for me. Number 2, I live in New England. I live in Massachusetts, and I'm a Jaguars fan. So number 2 for me is the New England Patriots. Admittedly, it's probably because of their fan base more than the team itself. I've grown to respect Tom Brady and actually be a fan of him now, whereas opposed to 10 years ago, I couldn't say enough bad things about Tom Brady. I was definitely a Tom Brady hater. Irrational Tom Brady hater at that. He has since earned my respect, obviously. Peyton Manning could never, just because he played for the Colts. But yeah, something about the Patriots, man, and just how they always won for 20 years. That rubs you the wrong way if you're not a fan of the team. So Patriots number 2 on that list. Number 3 for me would probably be the Tennessee Titans. Again, respect to their team, very good. It's one of those teams you hate because they're good. But they're also big rivals of the Jaguars. And one could argue bigger rivals than the Colts have been in the past 5 to 7 years. And just because they won the division last year, they're only getting better, it looks like. Of course, that's a team I'm going to root against. I don't want to see them win. If you go on Twitter and follow the social media fan bases of each team, they're at each other's necks all day. More so probably Jaguar fans than Titans fans, but back in 2018 when the Jags were in the AFC Championship, you saw it the other way around. Struggling for the other 2 on this list just because there's not many teams other than those 3 I really hate, I would say. Lately, you know what? I'll probably put them there. Cleveland Browns. And it's less hate and more just I underrate them compared to what everyone thinks, I guess. I don't think they're all that special. I think they're playing above expectations, but their expectations for them were terrible at one time. I think this year we see the Browns will have good games. You'll see them, their fantasy players light up your scoreboard. You'll see them on SportsCenter top 10 plays, but will you see them on CBS in February? Will you see them on CBS or Fox in January? I don't think so. I truly don't think so, and that's okay. But just their hype maybe is what I hate, and that's probably where I should rename this list. Just teams I hate or teams I dislike and put an asterisk there based on, you know, the fan base, based on projection, this, that, and the other thing. Final team, I guess, is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They just won a Super Bowl. I don't want him to go and win another Super Bowl. Please don't give Tom Brady more rings. He can't. He's running out of fingers. Let the man's fingers breathe. Let the NFL breathe. Let one of the other 31 teams win, even if it's Patrick Mahomes again. Please just don't let the Tampa Bay Bucs win another Super Bowl again. So I was debating here at the end of the episode to discuss the matchups for Week 1. To go over who I think will win, who I think will, you know, cover based on spreads. But we're not going to do that. What I'm going to do instead is direct you to the video I'll be putting out later this week, talking about my Week 1 picks. It won't be a podcast episode. It'll be more of an informal video that will also be on YouTube, obviously. You'll be able to find it anywhere you find the podcast. But we're going to dedicate a special segment, a special recording to just Week 1 after Thursday. Because this week you can mark me down. Dallas Cowboys, I'll take them +8. But going through the schedule of Week 1, a few games jump out at me. I just wanted to, you know, talk about my intriguing matchups, I guess. And the first one, I mentioned it earlier, Titans and Cardinals. That's a huge tone-setting game for this season. I think if whichever one of those two teams comes out of this week with a win, there's expectations through the ceiling, because both teams, if the Titans can beat the Cardinals or the Cardinals can go into Tennessee and beat the Titans, there's no doubt though either of those teams can win their respective divisions. I think they should have no problem doing it if they go and put on a crazy good performance against one of these teams, because I think it'll be a close game. I think I'm going to say a 4-point win for the Cardinals, somewhere around there. But again, I just spoiled another game. See what you guys have me do. We have the Sam Darnold revenge game, possibly. I mean, Carolina's hosting the Jets. It's not like Darnold has much to hate about the Jets. If anything, he should thank them for letting him go to greener pastures, no pun intended. Because even though they're greener pastures, they're somehow less green than the Jets, right? Steelers, Bills. Good old school, hard-hitting football game. I think we get there at 1 o'clock. That's in Buffalo. That'll be a really good litmus test for where Big Ben is, right? He claims he feels great this training camp. The Steelers are talking very highly of him. If he can go into Buffalo and put on a good performance on the road, I'll believe that. But it's going to be tough. If he does terrible, I'm not putting a nail in Big Ben's career coffin, but I do think that would be a really crucial game for Big Ben to compete or even win with a potential AFC contender like the Buffalo Bills. The final game here that intrigues me is a 4:30 game. This is the Packers traveling to the Jacksonville Saints, we'll call them, because the New Orleans Saints can't play in New Orleans given the terrible disaster down there. Bigger in sports, thoughts and prayers if that's what you do to everybody involved, obviously. But football-wise, the Saints are in Jacksonville at the Jaguars' home field, Bank Field. This is because Jacksonville will be in Houston earlier that day. But Packers-Saints, that's a really fun game. Everyone's expecting the Saints to kind of have an off year with Drew Brees out. I think they can go and set the tone week one that won't be the case. Either team can win this one. This is definitely a toss-up. I'm not even looking at a spread here. Don't know what it is, assuming Packers are favorites on the road. But you tell me either team wins by single-digit points, and I'm the least surprised person in the room. But that's just about the interesting games of week one. I mean, Seattle and Indy is another big game. I'm interested in that, not just as a fan of an AFC South team, but Russell Wilson on the road, first game in a dome, or partially open. You know how Indy Stadium works, the Lucas Oil Stadium, I believe it is. That should be a fun game. Not sure. You know what? Actually, I just want to see this quickly in real time. Who they think is going to win that game? I don't even know if they have an established line. Oh, yes, they do. Seattle is favored by 2.5 points. That's about right, less than a field goal. I know who I think will cover that spread, but you're going to have to tune into our video later this week to find out. Again, you'll see that on all social media forums that you'd see this podcast on. So whatever you're watching this on, just tune back in by, I believe, Wednesday night or Thursday. You'll be able to see that video. But yeah, episode 2, pretty exciting. We're closing in on 1 hour here. I like this format for the episodes. I think an hour is a good time to cover. I don't think we should go into a 2-3 hour movie type of length. But we can save the short videos, the 10, 20 minute clips into different videos. This episode format is good for listening. If you're just trying to get a feel for the games while you're at work, maybe while you're driving, give us a listen. If you're sick of my voice, rest assured we will get guests on in the future. I've already been in contact with a few good football minds out there, trying to get them on the podcast. But we want to show that we're consistent out here, that we have a fan base that's willing to listen. So make sure to, again, like and support this page. It's crucial to its survival. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Like I said, TikTok, Hauser Media, you can find us on. This is a Hauser Media production. You can find that on TikTok. But for pushing the Pylon, this is Jim Tannhauser. Thank you all very much. Make sure not to go too crazy week one. Pace yourselves for a long and fun NFL season. And pushing the Pylon will be right here every step of the way. Have a great night. Be safe.